Welcome back to the Ancestral Findings Podcast. From the rolling countryside of France to the forests of Canada and the bayous of Louisiana, the story of French ancestry stretches across centuries and continents. Families carried their language and faith and traditions wherever they went, leaving a mark that still shapes life today. If your family has been in North America for more than a few generations, there's a good chance some part of your story began in France. The French presence here reaches back over 400 years, longer than almost any other European nation. Tracing French roots means stepping into a story filled with explorers, settlers, soldiers, and families who left behind everything familiar to start over in a strange new world. To understand your French ancestors, picture the country they came from. France was wide and varied. Rocky coasts in Brittany and Normandy, soft farmland in Burgundy, vineyards along the Loire, and the Alps rising in the distance. Each region had its own way of speaking, eating, and working. A fisherman from Normandy lived a completely different life than a silk weaver in Lyon. By the 1600s, France was powerful, but life for ordinary people was hard. Wars, taxes, and limited opportunity pushed many to look beyond the sea. The crown and the church encouraged it. Colonization promised new land, new trade, and new souls to save. That's how the story of New France began. In 1608, Samuel de Champlain founded Quebec City, and within a few years, families began to arrive. Most came from the western and northern provinces, Normandy, Brittany, and Poitou. They were farmers, carpenters, fishermen, and soldiers. Life in New France was demanding but offered something rare in Europe, land of one's own. The winters were long and brutal, but with faith and endurance, these early families built parishes, farms, and small towns along the St. Lawrence River. Between 1663 and 1673, hundreds of young women, known as the filles du roi, the daughters of the king, were sent from France to marry settlers. Their dowries were paid by the crown, and they became the mothers of a new people. Today, millions of North Americans trace their ancestry to those women. Imagine a log house beside a frozen river, smoke curling from a chimney, the sound of snowshoes breaking a path between homes. That was daily life for the settlers. The church was the center of community life. The parish priest baptized babies, married couples, and recorded everything carefully. Those church books are the reason we can trace French-Canadian families so clearly today. Names like Tremblay, Gagnon, Lefebvre, and Cote appear again and again in those records. The foundation of a people who called themselves Canadians long before the word meant what it does today. Farther east in what's now Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, another French community took shape, the Acadians. They built dikes to farm land reclaimed from the sea and lived peaceful lives for generations. Their French was distinct, their culture close-knit. Then came 1755. The British government ordered the Acadians removed in what history calls le grand dérangement, the Great Expulsion. Families were separated, homes burned, and thousands were forced onto ships. Some found their way to Louisiana, where their descendants became known as Cajuns. Others returned years later to the Maritimes and rebuilt. If you have family from Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Maine, or Louisiana, chances are good that Acadian roots run through your line. Not all who came to Louisiana were Acadians. Long before the expulsion, French explorers claimed the Mississippi River Valley and named it La Louisiane. Settlers from France and the Caribbean arrived, bringing their faith, food, and music. They mixed with Africans and indigenous peoples, creating a Creole culture found nowhere else on earth. French remained the language of Louisiana for generations. Parish records were written in it, and the notaries, local legal scribes, kept detailed books of births, marriages, and land transfers. Those notarial records are priceless for genealogy. If your family has deep Louisiana roots, you'll find some of the richest French records in North America waiting there. Not all French settlers were Catholic. Thousands of Huguenots, French Protestants, fled their homeland after the revocation of the Edict of Nantes in 1685. They settled in England, the Netherlands, and Germany, before crossing to North America, especially to South Carolina, Virginia, and New York. They were known for their craftsmanship, education, and discipline. Some of America's early leaders had Huguenot ancestry, including Paul Revere and Alexander Hamilton's family. If your family carried a French name but belonged to a Protestant church, or if you find records in early colonial America instead of Canada, you may have Huguenot roots. Even in the 1800s, France continued to send new settlers. After the French Revolution and the wars of the 19th century, artisans, farmers, and teachers came to North America looking for stability. Many settled in New England textile towns in the Great Lakes region or in growing cities like St. Louis and Chicago. Some came from Alsace and Lorraine after those regions passed back and forth between France and Germany. Each group added another layer to the French story in North America, one of constant movement and renewal. French naming patterns can help you trace your line. Families often reused first names, Jean, Marie, Pierre, but added middle names or nicknames to tell them apart. French Canadians used what are called deity names, meaning called or known as. So you might find Jean Gagnon, dit Bellefleur, John Gagnon, called Bellefleur. Over time, some descendants kept the dit name, and others dropped it. If your ancestor's surname seems to change midline, this is probably why. Understanding DET names is one of the biggest keys to French genealogy. France and her colonies kept excellent records. The trick is knowing which archive to search. In France, each region or department has its own digital archive, holding both civil and church records going back to the 1500s. The National Archives in Paris preserve military and immigration documents, and even records of French citizens who went overseas. In Canada, Quebec's parish registers are a gold mine. The Drouin collection and the PRDH database index millions of records from the 1600s onward. The Bibliothèque et Archives nationales du Québec also offers scanned original entries for free. In Louisiana, both state and parish archives preserve French colonial and Creole records. The Archdiocese of New Orleans has baptism, marriage, and burial books reaching back to the early 1700s. In the United States, the Huguenot Society of America and state historical societies hold Protestant records. Early colonial censuses and church books often list French families by name and occupation. DNA testing can now identify French genetic clusters: Brittany, Normandy, Alsace, Poitou, and more. If your results connect to Quebec or Louisiana, that line likely came across the Atlantic centuries ago. But heritage is more than DNA. The French influence lives on in everyday life, in food, architecture, and even the words we use. Prairie voyage, Creole, and cuisine all come from French. You may find it in a recipe passed down, a family name, or song sung by your grandparents. These are living pieces of a history that never really ended. When you explore your French ancestry, you're following one of the oldest migration stories in the New World. It's a story of faith, courage, and family, of people who crossed an ocean with little more than their hope and their hands and built something lasting. Their language, their customs, and their love of life endured through every hardship. Do you have French ancestors in your family? Maybe you've discovered an Acadian settler, a Huguenot craftsman, or one of the daughters of the king. I'd love to hear about it. Share your story in the comments on YouTube or Facebook, and join others tracing their roots in Journeys of Our Ancestors. Each voice adds to the larger story, one that began in France and still continues wherever your family calls home today. If you've got a hard-to-find ancestor you're stuck on, I'd love to hear about it. Just head over to ancestralfindings.com and click on Contact to send me a message. While you're there, take advantage of our free weekly genealogy lookups. Explore thousands of articles and enjoy hundreds of podcast episodes. We've been helping family history researchers since 1995. And if you're looking for even more, check out our Genealogy Gold Q&A series over on Patreon. Thanks for listening, and as always, happy searching.